Hi everyone, welcome to today's video. Welcome if you are new here. My name is Tanya. I like to talk about books and a few other things on my channel. Thank you for stopping by and taking the time out of your busy day. So today I'm doing my June wrap up. I'm super excited to talk about the different books I read in June, and if you're interested, then let's get into this video. Give you a wrap up or like some statistics, I guess, about how my month went. I read a total of 6 books, which is really good for me considering some of these were kind of some bigger books, some fantasy books. So I feel pretty good about that, and overall I felt like it was a pretty good month. I felt really motivated. I read 5 romance and 1 fantasy that had some romance in it, so you can see that romance was kind of the theme for the month. And overall I just think I'm just starting to really love romance books. But let's start with the first book that I read. I think I'll start kind of at the beginning of the month, and most of these I do have in print. So yeah, the first book that I want to talk to you about is Dance of Thieves. And this is a YA fantasy, and it's part of a duology. I have the second book already. I hauled it in my other recent video. But I really did enjoy this book. I believe I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I think with any fantasy, sometimes, you know, the world building and things like that at the beginning. So this one, what I liked about it is that it's not super high fantasy, which is not really my thing. Like, I am more of like, I don't know what it's called, but like I like some fantasy elements, but not super high fantasy. That's not my thing. So I liked that this one, it had some elements of like fantasy to it, but I really enjoyed it. It has to do with, you guys know I never remember names, but it has to do with Kazi, and she is part of the Rattan, which is like the king's elite. Think of like Navy SEALs, but the queen's elite like guards, and she is part of that, and she's on a mission from the queen to go to this town, I believe it's called the Hell's Mouth, and there, while she is there, when she's in this town, she's tasked with this mission from the queen to go, and you're gonna figure out, you know, what is this mission that she's on. And she's actually a former thief, because if you can see, it's called Dance of Thieves. Then her paths cross with Chase, and he is the patri, or kind of like the leader of the people there in the village. And it's kind of like an enemies to lovers. There's an adventure. It's kind of a partial quest situation. There's just a lot. If you can see, the book is pretty hefty. Now I have to say, at the beginning it was a little bit slow for me, but once I really got into it, like 1/4 of the way, or about close to half, it really was like got really interesting. I really got into it, and I read it pretty quickly. I was also listening to the audiobook as well, and maybe kind of simultaneously as I was reading, which was nice, and I did really enjoy it. I think you know, it has some romance in there, enemies to lovers, and it's clean, so if you don't really want to read with spice, this is good. I feel like it's a really good balance with that, and just overall really great adventure, and just also redemption story there as well. It's a really great book. I would recommend it. I'm excited to read the second book and see what's happening, but there's some twists and turns and just some intrigue, some political things, some historical. I really enjoyed it, and I would recommend. The next book that I read, I really got into my romance kick, and a lot of these were new books that I recently purchased last month from the Target sale, and I finally, this one was from a while ago, but I finally got around to reading it, which was The Love Hypothesis. I know this has been everywhere on BookTube and BookTok and all those kinds of things, but I finally got around to reading it. I gave this book a 4 out of 5 stars, and it follows the story. It's set in like a university setting, PhD program, which I thought was really interesting. I really enjoyed that element. Maybe my teacher myself, anything with like academics, that kind of stuff, I find intriguing. I definitely think the romance story was good. I really enjoyed it. And I did also like how it kind of looked at just the element of being female in like a science dominator, like a STEM, being it follows the story of Olive, and she's kind of one of the only women. There's only a few women in the science programs, just kind of looking at that element. If you've read the book, I found that interesting. I thought it was really great to include that, and not just being like a good romance story, but also talking about that issue as well, and I find that really great. This book does have some spice, so just be aware, you know, if you're wondering about that. and I really enjoyed Adam, but there's kind of the whole idea of fake dating trope going on, and they end up, I don't want to tell you guys too much about it, but they end up starting a relationship. It's, you know, on a fake dating trope, and obviously you kind of can see where things might go, but I did feel like it was done really well. You guys know I do enjoy a fake dating trope, but sometimes, you know, if it's kind of like you want to see how it's done, and if it's done well, and I felt like it had good elements. I also really enjoyed the side characters in the story. That's also how I really kind of determine if I really enjoy a story, that it's not just the romance, there's more to it, and I really did like that in this book. I ended up giving it 4 out of 5. The next one that I read, I feel like this video should just be like reading popular book talk videos or booktube, but I read The Spanish Love Deception. This is one that I got last month also, that I hauled, and I just really wanted to get into it because, one, I just really love the cover of it, the colors and everything, and it's a romance book, which I've really been into, and also just because, again, I've been seeing a lot about it. And this was actually a pretty hefty book. It's over 400 pages, for almost 450. I gave this, I believe, 4 out of 5, and I think 4 out of 5. I think I'm right at there, 3.5, 4. I didn't know how it would feel because I feel like some people either really love it or some people like really hate it. Like I said, I'm kind of like 3.5, 4 stars. I didn't hate it. I don't think it's like the worst ever romance or anything for me personally, but it does have also the fake dating trope, workplace romance kind of thing, because they're co-workers. But it did, I have to say, like the one thing I'm noticing, and I understand that like tropes obviously can repeat in books, but I was just wondering, like this kind of gave me a lot of The Hating Game, and I love The Hating Game. That was a pretty good book. And I have to say, like, the beginning was a little bit slow for me, which is why it's kind of like 3.5, 4 stars. And you could kind of, it seemed very similar to The Hating Game, like certain parts especially, like at the beginning, which I felt like was like, you know, I was kind of like, okay, it kind of makes it predictable. Like, you obviously know it's a romance, but still, you know what I mean? But once it kind of got into the story, and once you finally got to the part where they actually kind of have their agreement and they're fake dating, and they're starting to kind of, you know, have the tension and get to know each other, and once that kind of took off, then it was definitely a lot better, and I flew through the book. But I think that's part of the reason why I gave it like a 3.5, 4 stars. So for me, again, it wasn't horrible. This does also have some spice at the end, just so you're aware. But overall, I did really enjoy it. I liked the characters. I like the main guy in here what's his name? Aaron. I never know names. Aaron. And I just really enjoy them as characters. Again, I liked also learning the elements. Like, I love seeing her family and kind of that aspect of in this romance. I always, in a romance, like, I always want to see, like, okay, yes, you're going to have romance. What else are you going to offer me? And I like that this book kind of talked about family dynamics, her Catalina, and how she kind of fits in within her family, and just also kind of like just coming back from difficult challenges in relationships and things like that. So I enjoyed it. I really liked it. I thought it was great, and they're just really cute together. I enjoy them as a couple in this book. So again, I like this one. Glad I read it. I still would recommend it. I think it's pretty good. I know that's how I feel about it. Next book that I read was Much Ado About Books, and this is one I'll list it on the screen, but this is one that was on Kindle. Oh no, I think I read it from Libby. But I read it on my Kindle, and I also really enjoyed this one as well. It was a quick read. It was a romance, and I liked it because it combined elements, you know, anything with like romance, but also about books or about literary things I love. And so it follows the story of Evie, and she's kind of she's in her early 30s, and she's just coming back from just kind of this breakup and this cycle of like bad dating. It's not going well. She lives in Chicago, and she loves her job and where she works, but just that things are not really going that well and starting to like not be so great. And so eventually, after just like a date gone wrong, she decides like, I need to change in my life. And so she books a flight, and she finds this little town. It's kind of like a small town trope as well, on this seaside town, to go and basically live above this bookshop called Much Ado About Books. And she gets to like run this store, right? Like any book lover's dream, just like to go and run a bookstore. So that's basically what she does, is she goes and she runs, so she signs up. And of course, when she's there, when she goes with the goal of swearing off men, that she's gonna go find figure out herself and what she wants in life, and just kind of like what her changes will be going forward in life. She wants things to be different. She just wants to kind of get unstuck. And so when she is there, of course, in comes this, like, under funny circumstances, but there is this guy named Rowan. I believe that's his name. Oh my gosh, did I actually remember a name? Did I actually remember somebody's name? Wait for it, wait for it. Yes, you guys, I remember somebody's name. But he is a farmer, and he has this adorable dog, and just like the story of them and just getting to know each other, I really enjoyed it. I loved Evie as a character. That I think she was done really well, that even though she's kind of going through this season of turmoil in her life, I think the fact that she's a strong, independent woman, and just also, like, it's done really well, that she's still, the book kind of talks about struggles that she's going through, and that a lot of women, just people in general, go through, but then also just how she, you know, is tackling that, and just other issues that are in the book. And I also really what I loved about this is I loved, like I said, it's a small town book, like kind of small town, and it's on the sea, which is really cool, great for summertime. But I also really enjoyed, I thought it was done really well in the book, is again the side characters. You really got involved, not just in their romance, but their romance and their story was kind of intertwined into the town. And so you really got to know the characters, you really got to kind of like cheer them on and like hope for them, you know. And so it was just really great. I thought they were done really well. The side characters weren't just like there to prop up the main character. You really got to know about them, and it was meshed really well into the story. I did feel like the ending was kind of maybe like a little bit rushed for me, but I still think overall it was a great read. I really enjoyed it, and it was just like a quick romance and just a good story. So I did really enjoy it, and I liked it. Going on to my romance train, I moved on to the next romance that I also hauled this last month, which was Hook, Line, and Sinker by Tessa Bailey. And this is the sequel to It Happened One Summer, which I listened to this, I believe, in the winter time. I listened to the audiobook of it, and I was so intrigued when I listened to It Happened One Summer. I did enjoy that one, but when I was listening to it, I really loved Piper's sister Hannah, and I love the character of Fox, and I was really hoping, like, please do a book about them, and here it is. And I have to say, this is one of those rare occasions where I feel like the second book, or like the sequel, is better than the first one. For me personally, I love the characters of Hannah, like Hannah and Fox, just more than Piper and Brendan. Which, you guys, I'm like remembering names today. Look at me go. This is great. Anyway, so yeah, but I did enjoy this book. Definitely, it has spice. I feel like sometimes Tessa Bailey, like, she does definitely have spice in her books. For me, sometimes it's a little much. I'm kind of like, okay. But I still did really enjoy the story. I feel like I just love the character development, especially in this one with the two of them. And it follows the story of, like I said, Fox and then Hannah. They're in this fishing town, and Fox is kind of known as just being like this playboy Casanova character. And just, I think it's interesting from the perspective, you do get both dual POV, which I really like. And just seeing it from his point of view too, just kind of that masculine, toxic masculinity almost in society, of kind of like just that expectation on men sometimes to be like just doing things with women and all the time, and just how he is changing and how that's not what he's wanting in his life. And also just seeing how this friendship, it's a friends to lovers, and just to kind of see how his friendship with Hannah and what he wants from it. I just think it was done really well from both perspectives. And Hannah's own journey of becoming, she kind of talks about it, becoming like the leading lady in her life and standing out for herself. And she works in production, so she comes to the fishing town where Fox is again, and again, from the first book, they're back in the fishing town, and she's helping a production company film a video. She works on the music, which I also just love that element as well. I'm a huge music fan, so just seeing that discussed, and just Hannah, again, I just related, like, I liked Hannah's character more than Piper in the first one, and I just enjoyed this one more. So I gave this, I believe, 4.5 out of 5 stars. I think it was done well. Love the character building, love the story, the romance. It was just really cute. I also really love the epilogue of this book, so I really did enjoy this one. Sorry guys, I had to quick change my memory card. But the last book that I read for the month of June, that I really wasn't sure what I would think going into it, but you know, I've been seeing it around a lot, so I want to check it out. And that is Every Summer After. Now, what got me kind of interested was when people were saying that it's similar to Love in Other Words. And I love that book. It is one of my favorite, like, one of my top favorite books that I recommend to everyone. I really, really enjoyed that book. And so when I saw it, I was like, okay, like that's, you know, like I would love to read something similar to that. Okay, so here are my thoughts. Did I read this book quickly? Yes. Did I get into it? Yes, I did. I read it in like a day and a half. Did I love the characters? Yes and no. But here's the thing. To me, and again, let me know your thoughts. To me, it felt almost like, I was telling my husband this, I was like ranting when I was reading this book. I feel like it is so much like Love in Other Words that I felt like I was just reading like another version of Love in Other Words. And that kind of bothers me because, again, like I said, like I understand tropes can repeat. You can have, you know, childhood friends. Like I understand that. But I felt like, to me, it almost like, I mean, like, I felt like it was almost like too much. Like, it follows the story of Persephone, Percy, and then it follows the story of Sam. And it's like, again, if you read Love in Other Words, I mean, it literally is so similar. Even some of the, this is where it bothered me, even some of the conversations that I'm getting ahead of myself. Sorry. I feel very heated about this book. Like, I don't know how to feel about it. Because again, to me, I feel like it was just so much was copied from Love in Other Words, but it follows the story of Persephone and Sam. They meet on like a little lake cabin cottage thing, and over the years it follows them. It goes back between now and then, and there's something that happened, and they grew, you know, like they were in love and they had been friends, and something happened. We don't know what it is, but the book jumps between now and then, and slowly leading up to us finding out what happened and why they haven't talked in like 12 years, but now they're reunited again and they meet each other, and, you know, seeing their childhood and just like their coming of age, developing from friends into something more. I mean, literally, you guys, it is so much like Love in Other Words. I just was like, even some of the conversations in the book that when they were like coming of age and they were talking about like when he asks her like, oh, did you get your period or whatever, I'm like, that's literally discussed in Love. Like, I just felt so much like, I was like, okay, I understand like friends to lovers or childhood friends, I understand having that trope, but just even how some of the conversations were almost seemed word for word from Love in Other Words, and I was just like, really? Like, I just felt like it was so predictable then. Like, even just like a parent died, a parent also died here, like something happened and then they meet again, something happened, they meet again. Like, it just felt so similar to me that I was kind of like, what the heck, like, is this even like okay? Like, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but it was just a little bit too much for me of the similarities. I felt like they were just so similar. And I think maybe if I hadn't read Love in Other Words, I probably would give this like a 4.5 or 5 stars. But having read Love in Other Words, I was just a little bit like, what? And again, it was like very predictable then. And I just kind of was like, okay, I see where this is going. Again, like, I enjoyed it, but I think that was just kind of in the back of my mind. I was kind of really bothered by that because I just felt like I was reading a lot of the same book, especially like the first half. Like the ending, there were a little bit of changes, but even then, like, if you've read this book, the ending, like the twist with, I'm not gonna say it, but like Persephone and like what she did with you know who, that element was also in Love in Other Words. So again, I felt like I was like, what is the new content? Like, what is new here? I feel like it was just like names were changed and like maybe different places, because this takes place in Canada, not the US, but it was still like very much the underlying same like story. And it did have some literary aspects, and like she wants to be a writer, you know, and it talks about like she has a niche for like horror movies, but it's just, I feel like it kind of fell flat for me. And just, again, the fact that it was like very, 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 very similar to Love in Other Words kind of honestly like bothered me. So I don't know, I think I gave it like a 3.5. I don't even know really how I feel about it, but let me know your thoughts down below. What did you think? So, oh, sorry, I feel like I got like really heated there for a second talking about it. I was like, ah. Anyway, so that is the last of the books that I read in June. Thank you guys so much for watching. Happy reading. Share down below what you have been reading this month, and I will see you in the next video. Bye, everyone.